So as you know, the title of this session is The Art of Communication Reimagined, Offering Encouragement with a Twist. So Elisa Goodman created curmudgeon cards back in 2000. So she has more than 20 years under her belt. She has a very interesting personal and creative history. And she will, I'm going to turn it over to her and let her talk about that, and also show us her creations, talk about her creative process as well. So Elisa, we're very happy to have you join us, and thanks for getting up early or being alert early, whichever the case may be. We turn it over to you. A reminder to everybody, if you have questions or comments, we will have time for that at some point. So you can just write, please, directly to me, or use the raise hand or participant icon, and we'll do our best, of course, to get to everybody. So Elisa, thank you for being here. All yours.
Welcome. So I'm going to just do a little correction. It's actually Elisa, which is like Lisa with an E. And so I am, as she mentioned, in Los Angeles. I was born here and grew up here. My dad was from the Bronx, and my mom was from Minnesota, but moved to New York in the 50s, and that's where she met my dad. So a little bit of backstory about them. My dad was a comedy writer. He worked for John Carson. He and his partner were the head monologue writers for 17 years. He worked for Jackie Gleason and Bob Hope and Flip Wilson and Carol Burnett. And my mom, when she moved to New York in the late 40s, ended up working for Yip Harburg, who wrote Finian's Rainbow and the famous song from The Wizard of Oz, Over the Rainbow. And so she worked for Max Liebman, who was the producer of Your Show of Shows in New York. I don't know, I'm sure some people know that show with Sid Caesar and Imogen Coca. And so I was already born into kind of a showbiz kind of family, not performers, but that's what they did. And I was fortunate that I had parents that really loved what they did. It wasn't like they had another job and had a side hustle of a wish that they were going to do something else. They were always really happy in their career. So I didn't have that struggle per se. I just had a struggle where the things that I thought I wanted to do didn't work out. And so I found from a very early age that I was being kind of an outsider looking in, and kind of always having to pivot, going, why doesn't this happen for me? Like, it happens for other people, but it doesn't happen for me. And so now at 65, you know, as I look back, I'm looking at connecting all the dots of the no's that happened, and realize that they were all leading me to what it is that I do now. And I have always loved everything that I've done, whereas my husband, who I'll talk about a little later, didn't love what he did. And so that was an interesting dynamic to be in a job for a really long time that he didn't love. So I started out as an actor, and then I just, you know, people would tell me that I was good, but I didn't like feel it in my guts. And so I found myself looking at all these other people going, wow, this person, they really have something. I don't even know why this person is in this class. I don't even know why they want to act. They don't seem very dedicated. And so these kind of weird things kept happening and happening until I was at the New Jersey Shakespeare Festival as an acting intern in 1980. And I was having one of those, I was in my early 20s, and I was sitting literally like trying to meditate. I didn't even really know what meditating was, but I'm like, what is my purpose? Just tell me, because I'm tired of just being confused. And of course, you know, that moment of thunder didn't come down, but I ended up going back to Los Angeles and auditioning for something where I just wasn't treated very nicely, you know, by the assistant. They weren't really very respectful to the actors. So I ended up writing to the theaters, the little equity waiver theaters, and said, do you want some help, like maybe casting your plays? And they said yes. And so I think I was like the first person that was a casting director for equity waiver plays. And in that journey, I met this man who His name was Gary Marsh. He had a company called Breakdown Services, and he used to go to all the studios and pick up the scripts that the studios were working on. And then he would break them down by characters. And then he would sell that information to the agents, who would then know how to submit their actors for projects. And he became friends with the casting directors who were going to cast the project. And whenever they needed an assistant, he would recommend me. And that's kind of how I got into casting. And one of the first people that I worked with was a woman named Nan Dutton. And she's the one that really showed me how to look at actors' faces. And she had this bulletin board, and she would cut out pictures from magazines of models and character faces, like people with beaky noses or a pockmarked face or just interesting people. And she would say, you know, casting is a visual medium. It's like a collage. You have to pepper the cast with interesting faces for people to want to continue to watch, because sometimes you never knew whether the director was going to want to take you down. Like, let's say you're like, oh my God, that person has to be the killer. And no, it's the little grandmother that's on the bench, right? So she really taught me how to find interesting people. And that little technique, you know, when I ended up retiring in 2000, I was really stuck because I didn't know what else I was going to do. And when I ended up making these handmade cards, which I will show you in a little minute, it filled the same part of my brain with this kind of, you know, I just didn't get bored. And so that is kind of how I segued into the greeting card business. But since I've never done a Zoom presentation before, let me tell you that the reason that I was actually invited here is because one of the teachers that you might know, Bonnie Max, who teaches creative writing, I'm actually related to her by marriage. Her husband and my husband, Ken, are first cousins, and she has been basically in the front seat of my career from casting to art, and she really thought that what I have to share would be of interest to you. So I hope that ends up being true. So as I mentioned, my husband, Ken, was in a job for many years that he did not like. He was an attorney. He worked for the Pacific Stock Exchange in Los Angeles. And after 17 years, they decided to close the LA office. And he really was, really stuck because he did not like the law. He did not want to get a job in the law. He was 50, did not know what he wanted to do. And that was at the same time that I left casting because the movie of the week industry that I was primarily in and independent features kind of dried up. So here we were both at 50 and saying, oh my God. Now, he at least had gone to school and had a degree in something. I really had no degree. I had a degree in acting, but that wasn't really going to get me very far. And so he was really depressed because his friends were all getting jobs and they were going to give him severance for, you know, anybody that stayed until they closed. And so he was getting up at like 5 o'clock in the morning, sitting in his office, reading a book all day because there was nothing to do, because the office was going to close and all of his friends had pretty much left, had no one to eat lunch with, and he was really, really depressed. So none of my brainstorming ideas about what he could potentially do were working. And so I told him he had to go to therapy. And so while he was in therapy, they decided he was going to go back to UCLA because we lived near UCLA at the time, and he was going to get a master's in library science. So it was a 2-year program, wasn't too much time. And so that's what he did. Off he went. And in the meantime, I started making greeting cards because I had a friend that I met at the New Jersey Shakespeare Festival, and she had been through a divorce, and her coping skills, she just decided she was going to get artistic and make these wishing boxes. So she went to the store, she got a hat box, she lined it in velvet, and she put some eucalyptus, and she wrote some poems and talismans and, you know, things about manifesting love or whatever it was. And she started selling them. And then she was like, oh my God, this is too much work. I'm not going to do this anymore. But she said, why don't we go to your mom's house? We never do anything fun. We'll sit at the dining room table and you'll bring all your collage supplies and I'll bring all my. So we made cards out of all of this miscellaneous stuff. And she worked part-time at a law firm because she was an actor. And they had a holiday boutique. So we took the cards there and tried to see if there was any traction with them. And, we sold some. They were just nothing necessarily special. And then she said, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to write myself a one-person show. So if you want to do the cards, go ahead. So I was doing the cards, trying to come up with what I was going to do while Ken was in school. And by the way, he didn't get his severance because they kept not closing the office. So the money that we thought we were going to live on while he was in school didn't materialize, and we ended up living on credit cards. And you all know how that is going to turn out. So I was in my house one day and my mom called and she said, I found your stamp collection from when you were little. What should I do with it? So I said, I'll come get it. And in this stamp album were these beautiful art stamps from France. And I thought, oh my God, these are so cool. So I started playing with the stamps. I'm going to show you one of my cards. Hang on a minute. So I use, let's see if you can see this, postage stamps from around the world. And I use recycled textiles. I'm going to show you a different one. This is an elephant from Laos. And when my casting partner came over one day, she said, I think you should just do the stamps. Don't do the collage. There's something with you and the stamps. And so I said, fine. And then lo and behold, as the universe brings things to you, if you actually pay attention, there was in the LA Times an ad for a Winslow Homer exhibit at the LA County Museum of Art. And the picture, or the art image of a man in a boat, which was on the poster for the exhibit, I said, oh my God, I have this stamp. It was on a US 4-cent stamp that was issued in the early 1960s. And I thought, this could be interesting. What if I took that stamp and I put it on a card and I made cards for museum gift shops? I mean, I'm just talking wild idea. So I had the chutzpah to get on the phone. I called up the gift shop and I went through this rambling thing. I was a casting director and I've got these cards and the stamps and the Winslow Homer, and I just, spun out. And the woman on the end of the phone happened to be the assistant buyer at the LA County Museum of Art. And she said, I never do this. I never make appointments for products that I don't sell, but you seem kind of kooky and weird. I'm going to take a chance on you. Come in on Wednesday and show me what you've got. And she ended up buying these cards. I didn't have a logo. I had like a sticker on the back. I had crummy paper. I wasn't even using fabrics. And she tried my cards out and they sold. And I was able to have the LA County Museum as like my first museum gig. And I did Modigliani and Degas, whatever they had that I knew that I could find stamps for. And that's how I started doing specialty cards for the museum gift shops like the Getty and things like that. So that was a godsend. But on my husband's end, he graduated from school, Phi Beta Kappa. And because he had a health condition, he needed a job that had health insurance. And to now cycle back to what happened to him, before I met him in 1982, he had a kidney transplant. He had total renal failure, and he did not have any trouble with his kidney at all. But transplant people that are on immunosuppressants have to go to the dermatologist because they develop little squamous cell skin cancers. And about 4 years after he got out of school or something like that, he went to the dermatologist and they found something that was up in a hairline that wasn't caught in time. And he ended up in December of 2006, he had surgery because the cancer had gone into 2 layers of bone in his forehead. And that was a scary enough surgery by itself. Then he went back to work. Everything was fine. In May, he said, I think I need new bifocals because I'm having some trouble seeing. So when we went to the eye doctor, they found out that he had a squamous cell on his eyelash. And what that ended up being was he had cancer in the orbit of his eye. And that resulted in him having an eye removed, which was bad enough as it was. But then he was driving, and so there's a muscle that allows your eye to track side to side and up and down. And they found that he had a tumor on the nerve that affected that eye muscle. And so he was taping his eye up so he could function, and that caused something on his cornea. So this eye was missing, and this eye had to be closed. So for all intents and purposes, he was blind. Now, for somebody who loved books, movies, was a photographer, this was phenomenally devastating. And it was not like somebody has breast cancer, prostate cancer. People didn't know what was up with him, and they didn't know how to talk about it. They were like, is he going to see again? Is he going to get a glass eye? Like, every conversation was weird. And so he was in a cancer support group, and I was in he was in a support group. I was in a caretaker support group. And I started doodling on the computer eyes. He was being treated at the Jules Stein Eye Institute. And I just kept asking questions like, why was this in our lives? What weren't we seeing? And so I just started trying to answer my own questions, and I was doodling. And then I would bring these crazy drawings and messages into my cancer support group, and people really liked them. And they said, you should maybe make cards out of these. So that's how I started the I'm Skewed line, because I feel like I have always looked at things from kind of an obtuse angle, any problems that I've encountered. And so it was called I'm Skewed, encouragement cards with a twist. And then I would use the metaphor of the eye to look at situations with a fresh perspective, with humor and heart. And now, 12 years later, I have, over 400 designs. I've turned them into cards. I put them in books. I put them on magnets. I put them into calendars. I'm doing some apparel. And honestly, they just light me up. I just write about what the problems that I have and how I can shift the situation to something better, or just, put my hands up in the air and go, really, today just sucks. And I put that on a card and people start laughing. So what happened with Ken is he did not get better. He passed away at the end of 2010. And it was a good thing that he got that job at a law firm, being a law librarian, because it allowed us to have all the insurance that we needed, and they took great care of him. And it's just, this card line is just how I can honor him. And just everybody goes through, I hope I can say shit. It's how we look at things that either make us move through the process faster or sit on the couch and eat a lot of bonbons. And so I give myself maybe 10 minutes, and then I'm like, time's ticking. You got to move. And so I'm going to be starting a podcast, hopefully at the end of October, called The Art of Grief, which explores, creativity around grief and creative ways to be creative when you are, going through hard things. So let me just breathe for a moment, because I don't think I've actually taken a breath in 10 minutes. And if you want to see, this is one of my first cards when I was just doing collage. I would just cut, it says, paint the town red, dressy girl, get yourself a pair. And I was just cutting shoes out of magazines, very, very basic. And then,
Lisa, when you hold them up, can you hold it up a little longer so we get to?
yes. You want to see that card again?
Yeah,
Okay.
just hold it up a little longer so we get to see it. Okay.
That was, first iteration of cards. Now, when Ken was going through his midlife crisis, I created this that had all the things that he loved. X-Files. I don't know if you can see that. It says,
Want to
find
read
out.
us some of those?
Yeah,
Can you
it
read
says
us?
find out why the wit of Ken is totally charming, funny, and personable. I thought he should send it out as like a resume. What is hip? Too funny to be smart. Unquestionably. To keep up, you need to ask the right questions. I might have some thrilling wit, which to record my boredom. X-Files movies, photography, jazz, history, psychology, birds, law and order, and baseball. The law. Can't go on. Must have. Open your eyes to the possibilities. So these were like weird little collages that I would make. This one says, what's in a name? Tell me what you're thinking. Flower deck. And this was a thank you note that I gave to our florist after our wedding. So I really just loved collage. Now, these are some of my illustrations. This one is new. It says, embrace your looks, create your vibe, live your wisdom. Let's see. My name is Zena.
Can you tell us how you picked that one? That's very cute.
Well, okay, so you see this moose face here? When I went through menopause 10 years ago, it was a menopause card, and it says menopause rocks. And the woman and the hair was like flaming red, like hot flashes. And so now that I'm embracing the gray, I decided that I was going to make a celebrate the gray card. And so I retooled this drawing. And that's why it says embrace your looks, create your vibe, live your wisdom. It's kind of like Oprah inspired. So then I have like a series of sports cards that say live life in full swing. This is Oscar, he's playing golf. I have a tennis one. I just made a pickleball card. I have so I do male and female. So male and female tennis, male and female golf. This is one of my favorite cards. His name is Wiley. I had a friend who likes to iron, and it says, iron out the things that cause wrinkles in your soul.
Are these all drawings or are they?
I draw an illustrator. I'm actually not trained as a regular artist. I don't draw by hand. The only thing that I can draw by hand, and I think you're going to have a really hard time seeing this, but in second grade, let me see if I turn off this light here. In second grade, I had this assignment where I was supposed to do a self-portrait, and I didn't want to do it, so I did one of my dad. And this was like early drawing. So this was like charcoal by hand. And I think that's the last time I ever drew anything by hand. But I could see evidence of my style now that I know how I draw, that was my style when I was 7. I just didn't discover it until I was in my 50s. This is one, I have a whole series of yoga drawings. This is Ruthie. She says, sometimes life sucks, it just does. I have one that says a curmudgeon lives here. This is one of my new ones. Her name is Isabella. It's a yoga drawing. It says, there is something magical and empowering about being able to say, I'm still standing. This is named after my friend Frolic Taylor. And this was a quote that I heard that says, if in life you trip, make it part of the dance. And she's one of my bestsellers. Her legs are twisted, so it looks like she could trip. So I just keep iterating, I just kind of go wherever my muse leads. This is my latest book. It's called Awesome. Fierce, feisty, and fabulous women game-changing the world. And it has stories about 100 women who kind of did their life their own way, even if there weren't examples of how to do it. And I use my illustrations in the book. So that what would happen is the women I picked would have to have had a quote that tied back to something that I already said in one of my drawings. And so, for instance, I love Jane Fonda. I couldn't find a quote that she said that matched my drawing, so she's not in my book. Not that I don't think she's awesome, because I do.
Can you show us some of the pages from your book? And
Sure. Yes, I can. Let's see what would be good. This is my character. Her name is Quilly, and it says, "You are always responsible for the precarious positions you find yourself in." And this one is Charlie. It says, saddle up, show up, or shut up. And she's popular. I have that in a male drawing as well. And the story that I put with this character was Amy McGrath when she was running for office, because she's a
can you
badass.
show us that one? Want to show us that one too?
The story? No, I mean the drawing that I just used, saddle up, show up, or set up, I put with the story that I wrote about Amy McGrath. The text, I think, is too small for you to see. Now this one is, the text on her says, "Getting curious enough about your own eccentricities can make you seem like a live wire. Live dangerously." And Diane Keaton is the story behind that. So this is a fun book, and I wrote it because my parents were very political. Carl Reiner and Ed Asner, all those fight the good fight people. I was really not that interested in politics until recently, when you looked like an idiot if you didn't know what was going on. And so I wrote this book to out myself, because I was literally I felt shame around not knowing what was going on. And so I decided to get curious and wrote it as kind of an homage to my mom, who passed away last year. She was almost 100. And so I wrote that for her a couple of years ago as a Mother's Day gift. And so I decided that my activism, instead of marching or getting on the phone and doing the phone bank, was to use my words and my art as my activism. So that has felt empowering. So does anybody have are there any questions in the chat?
Well, I have a question. Can you, so all of your, and a comment, looks like all the quotes you pick, whether for the cards or your book, are inspirational. They're feisty women who are speaking up. Could you tell us a little more, or show us how you actually do? You said you never learned drawing professionally or art, and I think you do everything on the computer. So if you can talk a little bit more about how you create the visuals, if you can do that for us, I think it would be very interesting.
So the program is Illustrator, like Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign. And literally, my husband sent me to Otis Art Institute to take a class in Photoshop and Illustrator back in the early 2000s. And I would go on Saturday, and literally my head would go down on the desk. Like I would fall asleep. I'm somebody who doesn't like theory, and I just didn't even know what they were talking about. And I was like so bored, but I had these programs on my computer. So I literally have a ball mouse. I don't even have a tracking pad. I'm really like totally old school. So this is like, I take my hand and I go like that. And I just, I drink a lot of Peet's espresso coffee, so my hands are always shaking. And I literally just start making lines and making little circles. And then I'd hit a button and something would spasm and I'd go, oh God, what did I just do? And then I wouldn't know how to undo it. So I'd leave it. And I'd go, okay, that looks pretty cool. I guess I'll just keep it. So that's what happened. I would call them like lucky accidents. And I've gotten better at them over the years. I'm going to show you, let's see. I'll show you if I can find it. A drawing from 2008 where it was just literally like a head and a hands, like kind of like Mr. Potato Head. Very, very simple. And then over time, I've gotten like, this is a more complicated design. And it says, how you show up in life matters. Or this
Can you
one
hold it up longer so we can see the sketch? Yeah.
Okay. This one actually says living life on your own terms is an art. But I also have her as a card that says how you show up in life matters. And let me see. Okay. So this is one of my very first drawings in 2008. I always sign ERG and then the year. So you can see the progression. So this is how I started, like super basic, no outfits. They had not become my Barbie dolls. And as I would just play with the program, I just got a little better, or there were just things that happened that I just kept because I didn't know how to undo them. And in 2015, the Palm Springs Museum of Art had a traveling exhibit called something, the art of the high-heeled shoe. And she wanted me to make illustrations of shoes. So I took my drawings and I started making outfits on them and shoes, and that created a whole other line of like 12 characters that were more on the dressy side. And from there, I just kind of went wild. The good thing about Illustrator, as opposed to just painting or drawing in real time, is that you can cut and paste. You can change the color. You can put a pattern and a shape in seconds. You can put a drop shadow so the character looks like three-dimensional and it looks super sophisticated. But if I exhibit at an art show that has high-end art, they don't want digital art because people want originals. And when it's a digital, it's not an original. So even though people think my art is very cool, there's a level of not good enough for, collectors of original art. So that's kind of the difference.
So if I understand correctly, the program you use is called Illustrator, is that right?
Adobe.
Okay, I'm going to ask David if he can maybe show us that online. And are you able, would you advise people in our class who think, gee, I might want to try that myself? Is that something you think most of us who have no art background either could do?
Well, I've been told, and I don't know the name of the program, that there's like an app you can get on your phone. Like I don't even own an iPad. I'm very low tech. That you can, it's like a drawing program on your phone. And people do a lot of doodles and crazy stuff. So you don't even need to have a subscription to Photoshop and Illustrator and all of that if you don't want to. I pay, I think, $53, $52.99 a month to have access to certain programs. So I have to have InDesign because that's how the drawings go into a book form or a card form. It used to be Quark, and now this is the industry standard. So I have to have Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign. And let me just tell you, I am not proficient in any of them. I get my I'm not a graphic designer by trade. I didn't even take any classes, but I go somewhere to get my stuff printed and they teach me things. And then I go home and I try and remember them. I do have a website and I do have somebody who created the website. I don't do that either. I can do some minor updates, but I'm really super low tech, but I can try and research that.
Well, David just put the link in chat. We can click on that if you want, or we could click on your website.
My website is, I'm going to write it down in this chat here. www.
Might be fun to see it.
Cards.com. And some people, I'm sure, because you're all New Yorkers, you know what a curmudgeon is, right? Does anybody not know? Okay. So people are like, why is your card company called Curmudgeon Cards? It's because my dad was a comedy writer and he knew some people who were curmudgeons, and he passed away in 1997. And I thought it had a good alliteration. And I had no idea at the time that I was going to be making handmade cards with postage stamps and fabric. So I basically did back-ass branding. And lucky for me, you know, I've trademarked it. It's memorable. People go into stores and say, you know, do you carry curmudgeon cards? But I call us lovable but crusty, even though the dictionary definition is an irascible old man. So that is why it's called curmudgeon cards. And my printed line is the I'm Skewed collection, because now I have just so many designs. But basically, I have done everything wrong. I've like made up all of my careers, everything I've done. I'm not, you know, I don't have a lot of degrees, and sometimes that gives me a lot of imposter syndrome, because you feel like, who am I to teach about this? I have no skills. I mean, I have my own skills and I sell my work every day and people obviously like it, but sometimes I feel very uncredentialed in life. Although at 65, I'm like, I don't care. It doesn't matter. You know, it really, there are no rules. There's no rules in collage. There's no rules in life. You just do it how you do it. And, you know, you keep the people that resonate with you, and the other people, you're just like, they're not my peeps. What can I say? They're just not my people.
So two things. There's a comment from Sherry, a friend of yours, I believe, saying you need to give yourself, here we go, you need to give yourself credit for everything you've done. And
Yes.
I would agree. I don't know if people need to be experts in creating artwork. You're saying something meaningful. We do have a link to your website. How about if we take a look at that? You want to do that?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay, if you want to click on that, David.
Okay, so this little art piece is I just finished a business program with a woman named Kathy Heller called Made to Do This, and one of our assignments was to create a podcast. So there's a website called Canva, CANVA, and you can go in there and they have a lot of templates, and you can, you know, make art in that website. You don't have to do the paid version. They have a lot of free options. So that is that. So if you, David, if you, where I'm circling here, I don't know if you can see it, there's a little arrow where after it says coming in October, there's a slider, and that will show you off to the right,
No, right after the word October.
Oh,
Here we go.
Yeah, there's a slider, and that shows you more, the larger pieces. There's probably like 5 pieces. That's living life on your own terms is an art. I have that on several different images. That's I Am Unstoppable.
These are some of your biggest sellers?
Well, a lot of these drawings are in my book, but yes, those are, I offer these as cards, 8 by 10s, and a larger, like 13 by 19 poster.
Okay. Yep. Next one.
Oh, look at that. Kiki is missing a picture. Thank you for letting me know. I will have to fix that. I think I just showed you that. That's embrace your looks, create your vibe, live your wisdom. That's the one I just showed you, Isabella, I'm Still Standing. There's something magical and empowering about being able to say, I'm still standing. Now, if you go to if you scroll down, David, if you scroll down the website, that is a copy of the cover of my book, Awesome. And then Life's Too Short to Spend with Assholes. That's a picture of my husband, Ken, and our little parrot. He used to say life's too short to spend with assholes. So I tried, I think I drew that in 2013 after he died. I was trying to see if I could draw real people. And so since I knew him pretty well, it looks a lot like him.
Yeah, a question for you. You know, many people, sadly, but that's part of life, have had to deal with grief. And either in the past, when they've lost people who they love very much, or even had complicated relationships with, or will have to do that in the future. What have you learned about dealing with grief, and what kind of feedback do you get from other people who've had to go through the process?
Well, I have experience with anticipatory grief because my husband was sick for 4 years, and then my mom, wasn't really sick until she didn't even die of COVID. She was almost 100, but she died because she had to be in bed so she didn't fall. So I knew that it was coming, and so I was able to find pictures, and I put together a video. I was scanning pictures, and with Ken, I had a really great memorial service for him, which I called a small wedding for one. And being creative has just really helped me not be sad, because my husband was miserable. And sometimes you just have to let people have their own, illness, even though you're gonna really miss
Speak
them.
louder again. Get closer.
I said he was really miserable. So even though I was going to be sad that he wasn't here, if he was just staying around, he was not going to have a good quality of life. And so I just had to separate myself from my own, I'm going to be sad he's not here, to he would have been worse existing. And so those kinds of perspectives have helped me not, I just see signs everywhere of them, like my mom's spirit animal was a sea turtle. And I see greeting cards with sea turtles. My screensaver is a sea turtle. I'm in the bathroom, and I've got flowers in the bathroom, and it's not even breezy. And the leaves start moving, and I'm like, there's no breeze coming through the window. Who's saying hello? Like, I just look for these kind of divine signs, and I found them everywhere. And so that has helped me feel like they're in the spirit world and they are trying to communicate with me. And I know grief is really so personal, and it's not, it's different than a 9/11 or a school shooting or a car accident that you don't get to say goodbye. But I was fortunate that I had a lot of time to process my grief. And so, I would either write about it and share it in my newsletter with people. People really just like the way I craft my stories, and I have a lot of humor in how I write. And so that has just helped me. And so sometimes I feel weird that I should feel sadder. I should be on the couch and cry, but I just don't. Now I know somebody who lost her husband of 50 years. She's a poet, and it's been over a year, and her husband had pancreatic cancer, and she's still not functioning. She writes, and she's got poetry is her thing, but apparently she just is still in the thick of it.
Well, I think the cliche that you read is that grief takes at least a year, but obviously it can last much longer, either in a persistent way or what a therapist told me, which I think made a lot of sense. It comes in waves. Weird things can trigger it, and it takes whatever time it takes. So I think you're really helping people with that. you have some of your friends are online with us, and I'm glad they could join. I wonder if any of them would like to comment about.
Frolic.
Yeah,
I
so
didn't even tell you the story of how I met Frolic. So Frolic, when I met her, I had just come, I had been accepted to ACT. They had a summer training congress. And I went for the summer, and it was a very weird experience. I had, again, a teacher who did not like to teach, that would say, well, what are we going to do with you all today? You know, I wasn't in the HIP group. I wasn't with the HIP teachers. I'm like, this was ACT in San Francisco. This is like super impressive. And there were people in the group that were just like, God, I don't know how they got here. Did they just take people because they wanted their money? I mean, this is ACT. And if these people are there, like, what does that mean for me? Maybe I'm not very good either, and they just took my money. So I left there, and they had offered me a spot to go into their 2-year training program. And I thought, oh my God, I can't imagine being miserable for 2 years. No. So I came back to LA, and I saw this little ad for a play at the San Diego Repertory Theater. They were doing The Club, which was set in a turn of the century men's club. They had done it on off Broadway. Tommy Tune was the director, and Frolic was in the cast. And she was directing this musical at the San Diego Rep. And I had gone to college in San Diego, so I went down and auditioned, and I got in. And I'm like, this is so weird. I just had this horrible experience at ACT, wondering, you know, if I'm even any good. And now I get into this musical, which was an incredible experience, and also created this lifelong friendship with this very interesting woman. So, hi, Frolic.
Hello, Elisa. You're doing great, sweetie.
Thank you. Thank you. So, I don't know, you've kind of been watching my trajectory from the wings, and you knew Ken and High Top, our little parrot. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you have anything to share, because, you know, you are an observer from 1979. So that's a lot of years.
Yeah. Well, just to say that what's on my mind all the time is the issue of aging, and especially for women, and the marginalization and the shutdown or whatever, the becoming invisible in a lot of social situations, or excluded or whatever. And I just want to say your aliveness factor is all over the place, and it's fabulous. And I love your connection, because I have it too, with, how can I say that, subtle signs from other realms, multidimensional self, I think is just tremendously helpful in the whole grief, coping with grief. So keep up the good work, sweetie.
Thank you.
can I ask what you mean by subtle signs?
She talked about the turtle, and about the leaves in the bathroom, you know, that sort of thing. I get things of right now today. I live in the Wyoming wilderness, and the magpies, you know, those gorgeous black and white birds, just came onto my deck, and I said, "Oh my God, hello, Maggie," because that's her nickname, and she lives in New York still. You know what I mean? There is all levels of communication going on all the time.
I mean, I'll give you an example. So right after Ken died, I got invited to, it was like a bird festival in Morro in Northern California. And I thought, this is so weird, because if Ken had known about this bird festival, we would have gone, because he loved birds. And I thought, very weird that I'm invited, but I'm going to go. And Ken loved owls. And so I'm up there with my mom, and on the first night there, we're on our way to dinner, and we're driving through some woods, and I get lost, and I see a street sign that says Fig. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so weird. I have a character named Fig. And it says, I'm so lucky to have you in my life. Something, you know, or I'm just the luckiest person to have you in my life. And Ken used to say that about me, and I put it on a card, and the character's name was Fig. So that was like my first, like, this is weird. Now I've got my all these bird cards. I'm doing the festival, and they have park rangers bringing in birds of prey and having like a demonstration. And so I take a break from my booth. I leave my mom at my booth and I go, and what is he doing? The park ranger is showing owls, but not just any owl. They were blind owls. And I'm like, what? Not only one owl that's blind, but two owls that are blind. So I thought, I am being visited at this bird festival by two blind owls and a sign. Like, those are the kinds of things that feel like, I'm being seen, I'm being supported by I call them just, divine magical downloads or just woo moments. But this happens all the time. And so I'm just not lonely because of that. I mean, that's just how
For
it
the
goes.
layperson, serendipity or synchronicity.
Yes.
Yes, that's right. Should I call you Frolic or by a different name?
No, that's the only name I have.
Okay, great. It's a wonderful name. You brought up the subject of aging, and so I was just curious if there's some observations you want to make about that, or how Elisa's helped you with the aging issue. It's a big one. Our school, as you know,
Huge.
is for people 55 plus, although a number of us are plus plus. But anyway, I'd love to hear some of your observations.
Wow. Well, I'm writing my memoir. I'm 75. And wow, it's a long memoir. I've been working on it for 3 years. And I think, well, at the moment I'm living in the wilderness and I can't be a mentor to anyone other than, sort of not in person, but I think that the wisdom, and especially the wisdom of women, I believe in the divine feminine is missing from our culture. Really, you see it everywhere. And someone said to me the other day, "Well, men make war, women make babies." And I thought, there's something to that. In other words, I'm very excited that women are coming to the fore, and that our voice is much more in the media. And that's all I can say is, let's keep it up, ladies. Dames, frauds.
So I'd love to throw it open to hear from some of the other attendees and students, either how you've dealt with grief or questions you have about it. And if there's anything, I think this is my own personal view, being creative doesn't necessarily mean being in the arts,
No.
writing, painting.
Like I have a friend that I was thinking of interviewing for my podcast, my friend Nancy, and she has a love of baking. And she had a sister, Gloria, who was bipolar and ultimately committed suicide. And because Nancy loved baking, she said, I'm going to have a bake sale. And she got donations from, high-end bakeries all over Los Angeles. And there's a West Side food bank that delivers meals to, 30,000 people a day. And she wanted it to be a fundraiser for the West Side Food Bank because she said, my sister could have been one of those people that was homeless. And now to date, she's been, I think this is her 10th year, and she's raised almost $750,000 just starting a bake sale, which is how she dealt with her own grief. And then she also wrote a one-person play about, her sister, and she's also an actor and a writer. And, it can be anything, anything that just makes your spirit spin, where you are lost in your activity and hours go by and you just go, wait, what just happened? I mean, one of my favorite gifts from my mom is a little clock called Time Flies in the Face of Creativity. In fact, hold on one second. Oh, excuse me. It says time becomes meaningless in the face of creativity. And it's like one of the best gifts she ever gave me, because it's just so true. And I'm just excited to feel like liberated from my own mental prison of, I didn't do a regular career, I didn't have the 401k, I didn't have a side hustle. My life was my hustle. So now I'm, my mom is gone, I didn't have children, my husband is gone, and I have the freedom to really just figure out what is next for me once this pandemic is a little bit under control and we can travel, which I can't really do right now. So it's hard to say, oh my God, all the decisions, I can make it up, when for so many years, my decisions were based on other people's needs. So just even trying to figure out what is it I want, I find is the hardest thing for me, because so many times I just deferred to other people. Where do you want to eat? What do you want to do? Where should we go? I just didn't like making,
I think that's
Doing
more
that.
true for women than for men. Yeah. Obviously, anybody else who wants to come in, I'd love to hear. I'd love to switch gears with you, Elisa, and have you talk a little more about the showbiz world. Your father was in, you were in.
Yes.
What should we know about it? Where are the stereotypes wrong? Where are they right? Just any comments on that part of life?
Well, from a casting point of view, it started not being fun because you get a lot. Now you have a lot of corporate takeovers of, let's say, a sports station taking over a network, and everybody wants to be involved in the casting process. And I was the person that really liked being behind the scenes, that liked to be in the office reading the actors, because I was an actor and I felt that I could really help them when they were auditioning. And sometimes I would be in a casting session and the director and producer would say, oh my God, you were so good. I found myself watching you and not the actor. I was like, oh my God, that was not the intention, not the intention. But, when you have these corporate people saying, well, I'm not sure about this person. They, could they have bigger breasts? Could they have, this or that? And you're like, I just spent 2 days reading 50 people. I brought you the best 5 people. There are no more people. The part works tomorrow. You have to pick someone. I'm not going to stay up all night and, try and get Angelina Jolie for a one-line role. No, not happening. And so that became more and more prevalent, where it just started wearing you down, because I would get excited about discovering somebody in a workshop, in a play, and then not have the venue to give them a shot, because we were in the movies, for television market, and as I said, independent films. I trained with people that did pilots, like I worked on LA Law, I worked on Star Trek, The Next Generation, but I myself wasn't a casting director for pilots. They basically, casting directors get sagged. Oh, you just like actors. Oh, you just do comedy. Oh, you just do drama. Oh, you do feature films. You do indie films. You do studio films. And so sometimes it's really hard to cross that, find yourself expanding. I don't think that every actor is a star. I don't think that every actor can do comedy and drama and voices and this and that. I think there are people that stay in their lane. And then there are people like the Meryl Streeps and the Kate Blanchetts that are, dizzyingly talented, and basically they can do, anything. But when it's
singing, dance, yeah.
The triple threats. But as far as like my dad was lucky. I just only remember one year my mom said, we can't do a lot of shopping because, dad isn't employed right now. And then my mom, after she worked on Your Show of Shows, I was born in 56. My sister was born in 1960. And then they had a Your Show of Shows reunion in the late 60s. And then from there, she went to work for Tommy and Dick Smothers. She was Tommy Smothers' secretary for 10 years. And then she pivoted and went to work for a company called Careers for Women, which was helping women in the 70s return to the workforce. Working for Fortune 500 companies selling ad space. And then she and her partner from high school started there's a company in New York called Ross Associates Speakers Bureau. And they started the West Coast branch where they were putting women of achievement and men of achievement who wanted to take their book or their speech to colleges and universities. And she became a lecture agent, and she did that for 10 years. So she pivoted, she was always working, she liked it. She didn't have to work, but she was always the working girl, the working woman.
Model, it sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
So they've always been nothing but supportive. And, from an early age, one of my little traumas was I tried a lot of things. And I asked my mom for piano lessons. And she said, okay, Lisa, I was 8, right? She said, if you want to take piano lessons, you're going to have to take them for 5 years because I want you to feel like you are proficient in something. So I made that agreement with my mom. And then my dad's mom would babysit for us. And she would come over, and she would, on a weekend, they were out, and she'd say, can you play something you're practicing? And I was very shy. And I could pound away like, Beethoven when I knew no one was looking. But if I knew someone was watching, I would get shy. So I would play something and I would make a mistake on a piece that I knew pretty well. And she would say, your dad pays so much money for piano lessons. Can't you play something all the way through without making a mistake? And I'd say, I do know how to play this. I just don't like people listening to me. That was like such a core wound for me that made me feel like an imposter because I can't tell you, it has taken me my entire life to unravel it. And what my dad would say is, I'd say, oh, Dad, I'm going to get a job. I'm going to apply for a job as a receptionist in a dental office. And he'd say, oh my God, why would you want to do that? That sounds horrible. Here, I'll give you money. And so between the two, it really was like, don't do something that is not worthy of your time, that doesn't light you up. It's not worth it. You will sell your soul. And so those things, with my grandmother's comment, was like, if you can't be perfect, why bother? Or if you're not going to put the time in, you're going to waste a lot of time and you're going to waste a lot of money in the process. But for me, it was a very wounding thing to say. And it has taken me my whole friggin' life to realize that it was a gift. Took me a long time to figure out it wasn't a criticism more than it
We're
was.
glad you did.
Yeah. So
I want to turn to Martha, who wanted to say something. Go ahead,
Martha.
Martha.
Hello, thank you, Elisa. I've always been fascinated by casting. I always thought it must be so interesting, and I'm sure it's very difficult to jog schedules and everything. And I have to say that every once in a while, and please don't ask me that, I'm not a professional. I'm only playing a part on TV. But every once in a while, like if I'm on the bus or in a waiting room or something, I look around and I start casting the other people.
Huh.
Like I go, hey, that guy would be good at Spencer Tracy would play him in the movie. Or, it's amusing. I have no idea, why I do that. I guess because I'm fascinated with it.
Well, here's the thing. The next time you go to a museum, if you go to a museum where they have old masters, start to look at the faces that were painted in the 17, 16, 1500s, and you can see their modern day counterpart. You'll find the Holly Hunter face. You'll find the Meryl Streep face.
God.
It's fascinating. Like the genetic reproductions,
Yeah.
souls going forward. It's mind-blowing. But
I always have fun doing that.
yeah, it's great. I mean, I'll go to a restaurant still. I mean, I've been out of casting for 20 years. You just never lose that muscle. There'll be a waiter and there's like an energy literally zzz out of them. And I go, what do you do when you're not here? Oh, I'm a dancer. I'm a singer. I'm an actor. Of course you are. I know this because you have a wattage around you, a wattage. There's an electricity that interesting people have. And listen, if I was on a train or a plane, I would be doing the same thing as you, because you're picking up a resonance and an interesting face, which is what you want to look for, when you are watching a movie, because that means it's well thought out. Some of those people that the camera puts their attention on.
I have a question about casting, and you, I think, touched on this, but from what I've read, I've never been in the theater myself or in that entertainment world. But I always hear about actors complaining. When I say actors, I mean male and female, complaining that they've been typecast. They played one role, they got famous for it, and then they're kind of locked in. And unless they're Humphrey Bogart or somebody really rare, they're not able to switch from villain to hero or just a different type of person. When you were a casting director, it sounds like you did not let that lock you in. And how does a casting director see beyond it? Particularly with people who've gotten so much identified with one particular role.
Well, I'm actually reading. So Ed Asner was a friend of my parents, and I have a cute story about that. But he
missed the name. Sorry, who?
Ed Asner from Lou
Right.
Grant and
Sure.
Mary Tyler Moore. So he kind of wrote a book called Son of a Junk Man. And when he went in to audition for Lou Grant, people did not think he was funny because he played a lot of tough guy roles and lawyers and things like that. And they really had a question about him, that he could be funny. And, a couple of people said, oh, no, he's really funny. I've been on stage with him. He could do this role. But he wasn't going to get that part. And what an iconic part Lou Grant was, right? So I think it's the actor might get typecast, and then it's the agent and the manager that pushes them to say, would you meet them for this role? Let's say they're a big actor. I'm just going to say Jim Carrey. Okay. So everybody knows him from stand up, and maybe he wants to do a dramatic role and nobody sees him that way. So now there's a little independent film where everybody's going to work for scale, which is minimum wage. And, here's a guy, maybe he's making $20 million a movie. He really wants to show people that he has a dramatic side. So he's like, I'm willing to work for scale because I want to do this role. I want to show people that I can do this role. And so many times that's happened, they've won the friggin' Oscar. Like, all the time, can name you, tons of people that showed a different side to them. But it's, when they come in and you're like, oh my God, they're phenomenal. We are the people that go to the director and producer and say, I know this is not who you had in mind for this role, but I just saw them in a play. I just read them. And I'd be doing a disservice if I didn't bring them to your attention because they're that good. And oftentimes, even if they don't get the role, it's an educating process. We all have our ways that we think about things and our prejudices. And sometimes you just need somebody that's seen the other side. It's like in anything, you see the problem and you see the solution and you're running around going, no, it's not red. It's blue. Can't you see it's blue? That happened to me when I was a kid. I would ask my mom to pick out my clothes and she'd pick something out. My mother had exquisite taste. And I'd say, Mom, can't you tell this is not the same red? This red has a little more orange in it. And this has fire engine red. They don't match, right? And what did that do? Now that crazy little pain in the ass 8-year-old, what do I get known for? My color matching on my handmade cards. They're like, oh my God, you found the exact fabric that matches the color in the stamp. And that has become my trademark. So I think you just have to find people that are champions, and you have to do your work as an actor to say, this is my part. I know you have to see me do this part. They either put themselves on tape they stalk you, you know, if they're really good, you know, there are people that, like the person who plays Flo on the Progressive commercials, that woman is typecast. She's like Dina Dietrich, Mother Nature. And Dina Dietrich happened to have been a really good actress, but that woman, Flo, gets paid a lot of money because there is no way you are ever going to see her in anything else. Now, I don't think she wants to have a career as an actor because I've never seen her in anything else, but those type of people are going to get typecast as that person, and they're going to have a very hard time shifting. I mean, even, I can't remember the name of the girl. She was, I know this is going to sound weird, but she was in porno films in the 70s. And she decided to be a serious actress. And she was actually really good, but she had that stigma for a long time until she did something where she got the credibility that she deserved, that she actually had some chops. Can't remember her name at the moment, but sorry to be a non sequitur there.
So the moral of the story, or morals, seem to be persistent, be a pain in the ass, to use your terms, and sometimes turn a liability into a strength.
I mean, I worked on Roe versus Wade. They did a movie of the week, NBC, and Holly Hunter played Jane Doe. And they were looking for the woman who argued in the Supreme Court. And of course, her name is escaping me at the moment. But anyway, Sarah. So we were auditioning all these women, and Holly Hunter's roommate in New York when she was just starting out was Frances McDormand. Nobody knew who Frances McDormand was. She had gone to Yale. She was, you know, she's Frances McDormand. She's a little bit odd, a little bit shy. And NBC is doing Roe versus Wade with a movie star, Holly Hunter, who most people never saw the piano. Few people saw broadcast news, didn't really know who she was, a sensitive subject that they were attacking. And they felt like they had to have a name. And this woman had to argue in front of the Supreme Court. So the actress had to be really strong. And we saw everybody in town. And Holly just kept saying, it's Fran. You have to hire Fran. And they're like, nobody knows who Fran McDormand is. We are not hiring Fran McDormand. So they ended up with Amy Madigan, who had just come out from Field of Dreams. And so she was the one who played the attorney. But can you imagine that, you know, years later, Fran McDormand has won like 2 Oscars, been nominated for, you know, just a handful of things. And at the time, she was a nobody who had gone to Yale, who nobody knew, and they passed on her. And you're just like, kill me now, right? It's not that Amy Madigan wasn't good, but she's not Fran McDormand, you know? So that's an example of the right person not getting the job because they were unknown, and they were, you know, worried that nobody would tune in if they didn't have a visible draw of a name.
Okay, that's a nice story to end on. Elisa, I want to thank you very much, and for your friends for coming in, Frolic for participating as well. And we thank you for all you've said, for your inspiration, and long may you prosper, as they say.
Thank
Okay?
you. I hope this was really helpful, because this is honestly the first time I've ever done a presentation like this, and you just want to cover all the bases and tell all the good stories and not look like an idiot and have people walk away with some, you know, good wisdom nuggets and some inspiration to, you know, carry on your day with.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Okay, take good care.